We're looking at Pensarn beach here on the northwest coastline, and we're just panning from east to west, looking at the low tide sandbars and slowly moving our way towards the little headland you can see there in the distance. Today I wanted to fish the turn of the tide at low, so I made my way along this little sand spit here, and obviously I needed to pay very close attention once the tide turned to these gullies here that I'm pointing at. These would be quickly filling in behind me if I wasn't careful. Target species was dabs, outside chance of some whiting, so let's see how I got on. Right, tackle I'm using, it's a Veret Cosmico continental style rod at 70 to 150 gram casting weight, optimum casting weight 125. I think actually the optimum casting weight maybe a little bit less than that, but I'm going with 125 today anyway. I'll show you that in a minute. Reel, Shimano Aero Technium, magnesium. This is with the 6000 size spool. Beautiful reel, silky smooth. I only use it for relatively light continental style fishing though. Anything heavier, I tend to go for multipliers and stronger rods. But today it's calm, there's no tide. Well, there is tide, but there's no tidal run that's going to collapse the tip on these soft rods. So nice bite detection today, hopefully, for the dabs I'm after. The leader, it's so this reel is loaded with Asso low stretch. I think it's 12 or 15 pound strength. It's a nice compromise between braid and mono. I haven't tried many other lines recently, but I'm happy enough with this. Got a tapered leader, going to 60 pounds on an Ian Gold's rod rest, and down to, at this stage, because I'm fishing a dropping tide, I'm only going for a the lead's blade in the sand already. I'm just going for distance because the tide's dropping for the next 2 hours, so I feel I've got to kind of intercept the fish as they're going out. So I'm going to cast out as far as I can, and then hopefully as the fish are going out with the tide, they'll intercept my bait. Once the tide turns, I won't be so concerned about distance. I'll just probably 60 or 70 yards, and I'll be walking back with the tide anyway, so by the time I wind in, it'll be out by about 100 yards, I guess, in this shallow beach. 2 hooks set up on a this is this snood they call it, but this line to which the hooks are attached is amnesia in the black colour, and it's called amnesia because it's a memory free line, so it's great for hook lengths. Aberdeen style hooks, size 1s and 2s, I think. It's about right for the dabs I'm after today, but well, it should be enough if sizable whiting come along. It's about all we should really be expecting today, maybe a flounder. And it's on a it's a dedicated distance rig, so we've got this SRT clip here that stops the snood from stretching. The spring takes the stretch of the snood whilst you're casting, and it's small swivel there, Berkeley style barrel swivel, trapped with beads and crimps. When that hits the water, these channels inshore, the water pressure pushes that up and releases the hook, so you get distance whilst you're casting and a virtually foolproof release when that lead hits the water. I might have a little bite here. It's been out there for about 2 or 3 minutes. Could just be wave action on the line though, so we'll see. Normally you can differentiate between wave action and bites. Wave action, eventually you get used to the rhythm of it. It's different every time you fish, but essentially it's fairly regular. It's kind of a pull down and a spring back without slack line. and that just keeps going on like that. If you have a pull down and a spring backwards slap line, that could very well be a bite. Fish has moved off with the lead moving towards you, so hence the slap line. Or you can have really windy days and a lot of wave action, and you can still see bites because suddenly you get a rattle that's just different to what the wave action has been like. Now there's a bite, just as I'm speaking, that was a bite. So nice, right on cue, and it's either going to be a whiting or a dab with an outside chance. It might be a rockling or a weaver fish. I think we generally tend to get those more in the summer off this beach. I very much doubt it's a schoolie. They are about all year, but that would be a tiny schoolie. Even a 1 pound schoolie bass gives you a good bite. That to me looks like a dab or a whiting, and dab is the target species today. So we'll have a wind in a minute and see what we've got. But with these sorts of bites, I never strike. There's enough tension out there for this fish to be hooked, even without using a grip lead. And they do tend to fiddle with baits a little bit. I have no idea at what point of the worm has that fish started to chew on. It could be in the middle of the worm where there's no hook point, and it could be working its way either down or up. Either way there's a hook it will eventually get to. They've got small mouths if it's a dab, for example, and there's no rush. So I'm just going to be patient with this. I'm going to sit in my hands for a moment, give it 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll have a look in a second, well, in 3 or 4 minutes, and see what it is. That's a small little kind of average sized dab you'll get off this beach, and it's got a strange marking there. It's unusual. Haven't seen that before. Not sure what that is. Anyway, we'll unhook this, put him back, he's a bit small. 22.5 centimetres. This one, we'll get this one back as soon as possible. I think here you see maybe it's a female with some roe in it. The distinguishing feature about dabs, you'll just get to recognise them instantly without having to do what I'm about to do. But when you're not used to it, the distinguishing feature is twofold. One, when you rub your finger up there, from the tail along its back to its head, it's rough. Place and flounder aren't, and its lateral line, which is one of its sensory organs, has a sort of half moon shape here, a semicircle here. Tide pool, this sand pool, there are tons and tons of tiny little flatfish. I mean, they're really small. They're about half a centimetre long, but there's loads of them. As I'm walking along, they're just shooting off. Oh, it's gone into the sand. It's so well camouflaged. the camera is right over it. I have no idea if you're seeing it. If I put my finger close to them, they kind of see me. My finger's pointing at this guy now. There you see him? Camouflage is matching his surroundings perfectly. The tiny little white flecks on the flatfish's back, mimicking the tiny flecks of quartz sand, I guess it is. Can you see that? Oh, he's just buried himself. I think he's right here. There he was, yeah. Okay. There he is, he's right. Can you see that? Well, there it is. I actually caught one. I don't want to be too long. You won't be enjoying this experience. And it must have just settled, because normally when these, their life cycle is in their very early stages, they're planktonic and they're not even flatfish at that stage. And then the eyes move around and they settle into the inshore beaches, which effectively serve as nursery grounds for these little flatfish. Nursery grounds for place dab, sole, flounder, turbot, brill. Let's see what this guy is when I get home and I look at the video footage. I'm going to put him back now. There you go, little guy. Look at him. You're wondering what on earth's going on. Look, there's his friend come to see him. Oh, we've got a little hermit crab here. He's got stranded in this gully, which is now, I suppose you could call it a mini saltwater lake. The tide's gone out. There's this kind of opening to this gully. But this hermit crab's clearly got trapped in it. There's a few shrimp in here as well. There's the end of the gully. And here's a shrimp. There's a lot of life in this little pool here. It sort of gives you a good idea of what's out there in the sea. There's a lot of these washed up today. They're commonly called sea gooseberries, because there is a passing resemblance to a gooseberry. There's a lot of these fish on this beach, and these spines here, I don't want to get anywhere near them. On the dorsal fin there, which is now resting on the fish's back, but the dorsal fin comes out. I'm not going to even attempt to get that dorsal fin out, because these guys have got a very nasty sting. And yeah, you don't want to get stung by these, which is why if you paddle in this beach, it's advisable to wear some kind of neoprene wetsuit shoe or a flip-flop, or at least something. I think this is a lesser weaver. I'll check when I get home, but yeah, there's a greater and lesser weaver, and I think this one is the lesser variety. Interesting feature of beaches like these are the gullies. These shallow beaches where the tide goes out a long way, they often have a lot of features at low tide, and it's really worthwhile familiarizing yourself with those features. And whilst the gullies are shifting all the time, especially after storms, they do tend to stay in the same overall places. And it's these gullies where you want to try to be landing your bait when you're fishing at high tide. And the high tide in this beach is up there, where you can just see the stones starting, and at various points going up, depending whether it's a neap or a spring tide. Spring tide's right up onto that ridge there, if you can see it. I think just pointing in the right area, just here. And you can see there's that sort of hump of sand. You don't really want to be on top of that hump of sand. The fish will be there because as they swim over it into the gully that just meets the shingle. So you can still catch fish there. It's not where you should really be aiming to land your bait. It'd be better right at your feet at the edge of where the water meets, where the sand meets the shingle, rather than that. Otherwise you'd be better off trying to cast over it and into this gully here. And that's where a lot of the food will be washed into, a lot of the fish will congregate. But also importantly in summer, particularly, some of these gullies can form ridges. That's not a summer or winter thing. It just depends on what the water is doing at any given time of year. But you can get quite distinct ridges on the edge of the gully. So where the water meets the sand, there can be quite sharp ridges by about 1.5 feet. And if you run your fingers along those, or a fork, or dig through them, you'll find that's where the sand eels are. Even only last summer, I used, just as an experiment, just raked the side of those ridges with my fingers, and I was finding little sand eels about this big. I was even finding white rag. So obviously, you know, that's what's happening in the summer when the water is coming over. Those ridges, those sand eels will swim out of the ridges, and that's where the bass will be feeding, intercepting them as they come out. Not just there, but you know, it's a rule of thumb, it's a good place to try and land your bait. There it goes, there it goes. And that will be a sand eel he just caught. I think that's going to be the last of the long casts I do, because we're about 15 minutes away from the turn of the tide. At that point I'll be less concerned about trying to reach fish that are going out with the outgoing tide. I'll probably change to a 2-hook rig with a combination either squid, razorfish or lugworm baits. So I'll probably bait that up now, so when I wind this in I'll just clip that one on and we're ready to go. Then I'll be casting that a little bit shorter, maybe 60 yards max. And although low tide's at 12, it's going to be a while before it actually starts kicking in, starts moving up the beach. But when that happens, that's probably the point. I expect to get a few more fish. There's stuff happening out there. I'm getting a few little rattles. The baits are coming in. Clearly they've been eaten by something, or something's been eating them. But no hookup since that dab about an hour ago. So it's gone quiet a bit, but we'll see what happens on the turn of the tide. To be expected, really. Never really that confident fishing in outgoing tide, so hopeful for the turn of the tide, that is. So a small dab right on the turn of the tide. Obviously quite a big hook for such a small fish. Nice and lightly hooked. This will go back fine. I can see quite far out. There's shallow water with the sandbar, so there's little to be gained from casting far out now. Nice little dab. So time for the 2-hook rig and some shellfish baits for the first cast in that rig. Clip from the old rig to the new rig. Both go tangle. Just got a little clip there. I'm going to pop this rig about 60 yards out. So I'm going to try this. This is a red cockle found on this beach in summer after a storm, and put it in the freezer straight away. So nice bait for dabs cockle, but this being, I think it's a red cockle anyway. That's the fleshy bit I'll put in the hook. And it's worth bearing in mind that after a storm there are so many shellfish that are washed up on this beach. I've seen absolutely thousands of razorfish, and the seagulls are swarming all over them, flocking all over them, having an absolute feast, gorging themselves. And if you can time it right, then you can get a lot of razorfish very easily. I'm also going to try razorfish as well in the next couple of casts. Again, these were razorfish I found on this beach and collected using the salt method, where you put salt on the key-shaped burrow that identifies the razor clam burrow, and you wait a bit and they pop up. That's the theory anyway. Doesn't always happen, but last year I got lucky and I got a few, so froze those up as well. So I'm going to try those today as well. And on the bottom hook length I'm going to have a cocktail of frozen black lug on top. We'll just thread that up. It's pretty mushy, it's not great, but I'm catching dabs on it, so it's alright. And on this hook we're going to put some razorfish and wrap it around elastic cotton. And that's a small razorfish and black lug cocktail. That should be nice for the dabs. I never make tea in the flask. It tastes rank. So I always make it on the beach like this. It's a little bit of faff. The tea tastes like a proper cup of tea. Leave that to brew for a minute or so. Nice and strong. On a cold, crisp winter's day like this, unfortunately there's no wind chill today. Still, air temperature is about 1 degree. Can't beat a hot drink. If nothing else, it warms up your hands. And a bit of milk here in my old Coleman's mustard jar. Cheers. That'll do. Quite a nice sized whiting there. Well, that's a whiting that's about just under 32 centimeters, so it's well in size, and it's nice. Nice couple of fillets I'll get from that. And I just caught that 2 minutes ago, and I've dispatched it humanely, very quick knock on the head, kills it instantly, and then I've gutted it. Because if you're going to eat the fish, you want to gut it as soon as you can, because leaving guts inside a fish can spoil the flesh. So that's all ready to be filleted when I get home. So another dab, the third one, and it took just a straight lugworm. Alright, you can see how easy it is to get cut off at this beach. So I'm on a little spit of sand now. If I stay on it, I'm going to be cut off. This gully is now filling in behind me. You can even see the water coming in as I film. And so I've got an exit point, it's okay, and I know this beach, but if you don't know the beach, you've got to be really careful. Always look how the gullies are filling in behind you. And this gully here is also filling in. We're going 360 degrees now. You can see that filling in back to my setup. Well, that was the last cast. The worm on the bottom hook was stripped. There's a little bit of worm left on the top hook. I find that once the tide really starts racing in on this beach like this, like it is now, it's not so good. 2 hours after low tide, racing up to 2 hours before high tide. It's just difficult to fish because you're moving around so much, and either fish it over high tide or over low tide. And today I've done alright, caught quite a few dabs, can't remember how many, 5 or 6. Nice whiting. And it's been an absolutely beautiful day, mid-January, and I've been almost too warm because there's been no wind chill. We're going to fillet this whiting now, and I've got a sharp filleting knife, and the most important thing is to always cut away from your hands. Also going to try and take as much flesh as possible off this fish, so we cut behind the fin towards the head because there's a lot of flesh there. Now, feeling for the backbone, we're going to cut down the fish, just the other side. See, these are its dorsal fins, and for this fillet we're just cutting the side of them, and we're feeling our way down. You can fillet fish pretty quickly, but I like to take as much flesh as possible off them, so I can feel the backbone. You feel it with your knife, you can push it through at this stage, and resting that knife on the backbone, cut through like that, and there you can see this backbone of the fish, and that's what we're filleting against. So at this point I normally just gently, and I'm not in any rush, time's on my side, I'm just gently working my way down this fish, keeping the knife as close as possible to the bones for minimal wastage. Now you can see how the flesh is being peeled away, how I've been working the knife across the backbones here, and here's its spine. Okay, and I can't guarantee it'll be boneless, but it'll be pretty much bone free. So we've got a nice fillet of whiting there, and it's just a case of then repeating on the other side. Put that to one side. Okay, same again. Casting along the backbone. Main thing is I just want as much flesh from this fish as possible. Alright, so there you go, 2 nice fillets. Even though it's a wash now. So there's probably all sorts of ways you can cook whiting, but I'm just going to do these very simply with a wash of beaten egg and then sprinkle some breadcrumbs over it and fry it. And I think fresh whiting done in that way is absolutely beautiful. So there you go, a couple of whiting fillets and a few dab fillets. The dab fillets have been skinned, all boneless and as fresh as you can get it. This fish is just literally a couple of hours after being caught, and it's going to be absolutely delicious.